friend to the study. I'm so happy to see you today. Look what I found. It's a cloth-bound, hardcover book of poetry. The collected works of William Butler Yeats, Volume 1. Revised poems, edited by Richard J. Pennerin. Published by Macmillan. When I say I found this, I literally found it at the university. Some undergrad had tossed it into the bin with the rubbish, so I picked it up, and I'm going to read some poems to you today, and we'll learn a little bit about who William Butler Yeats was. We can hear the sounds of this cloth cover of the book. And we'll hear some pages, paper sounds as well. And we'll go nice and slowly. And we'll also have a cup of tea. I've just made a floral tisane, and you can see maybe little bits of the flowers floating on the surface of the tea. And it's a very pretty pinky color, and the cup has got honeysuckles from a design by another William Morris. So let's relax and listen to the poetry and life of William Butler Yeats. Yeats was born in County Dublin, Ireland, in 1865. He was born to Protestant parents and was a poet from a very young age. He ran with a literary set in London and admired the poetry of Percy Shelley, as well as Edmund Spenser and the Society of Pre-Raphaelites. In his prolific works, he wrote not only poetry, but all kinds of literature, including drama, and was perhaps the most prominent figure in the Irish literary revival, bringing Irish literature to the forefront and helping found the Abbey Theatre, an Irish literary theatre. Active in politics, he also represented the Irish nationalist and liberalist movements supporting an Irish Free State. In later life, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. In his young years, he emulated the English Romanticists and became himself a symbolist poet, making use of imagery and symbolism, alluding to abstract thoughts and resonances in the meaning of his words. So many of Yeats' poems were made famous by being set to music or by their association with the stories. And the one here that I found really reminded me of the video I did last month about Fair Rosamond, the famous mistress of Henry II of England. This one is number 20, The Rose of the World. Who dreamed that beauty passes like a dream for these red lips with all their mournful pride, mournful that no new wonder may betide. Troy passed away in one high funeral gleam, and Usna's children died. We and the labouring world are passing by, amid men's souls that waver and give place, like the pale waters in their wintry race. Under the passing stars, foam of the sky, lives on this lonely face. Bow down, archangels, in your dim abode, before you were, or any hearts to beat. Weary and kind one lingered by his seat. He made the world to be a grassy road before her wandering feet. Indeed, we see so many references to all of the romanticist notions of the 19th century, but also the influence of the innovations and then the destruction of the First World War that changed so much. The next one I'll read for you is one of my favorites, number 74. He wishes for the cloths of heaven. Had I the heavens embroidered cloths, enwrought with golden and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark cloths of night and light and the half-light, I would spread the cloths under your feet. But I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. Such a short verse, but so full of meaning in several ways. So in loving, admiring, he has nothing to give but his dreams to the one he loves. He's not rich, and he might also not have fame or power, but he has his dreams for the future. Dreams that can reside in the heart and spirit, that can fire the mind and motivate people, and he gives them to his beloved, spreading them beneath the feet where the beloved will tread, to soften their steps. But we also have the last line, tread softly. And this is very meaningful for not only dealings of the heart, but for everyday communication on every human level. Tread softly. Don't play with people's emotions. Be gentle to the world around you, to all of the creatures in it. Softly does not mean you are weak. It means that this beloved is reminded that the lover is giving her his dreams, her or him, could be either. Neither needed to be a romantic love. So it's a very, very interesting poem. This poem reminds me of something written by Justin Huntley McCarthy in his historical fiction about Francois Villon, the French people's poet of late medieval France. This book was made into a film in 1938, and the name of the film reflected that of the name of the poem at the beginning of the book, titled If I Were King. A lovely film with Ronald Colman and Basil Rathbone. The book's popularity is evident in that the year before, another delightful film was made with Tyrone Power and Loretta Young. And Loretta Young's character recites the poem to that of Tyrone Power, who asks, "Is that Francois Villon?" And she says, "No, it's about him." And this poem is at the beginning of Huntley McCarthy's book of the same title, If I Were King. If I were king, ah love, if I were king, what tributary nations would I bring to stoop before your scepter and to swear allegiance to your lips and eyes and hair? Beneath your feet, what treasures I would fling. The stars should be your pearls upon a string, the world a ruby for your finger ring. And you should have the sun and moon to wear, if I were king. Let these wild dreams and wilder words take wing. Deep in the woods I hear shepherds sing, a simple ballad to a sylvan air, of love that ever finds your face more fair. I could not give you any godlier thing if I were king. Then we come to the year 1904. In the 20th century now. Again, lots of nature, inspiration, memories. We know Yeats was appreciative of Shelley's poems. And of this country life of Ireland, 1910, The Green Helmet, and other poems. The era when Ireland was having lots of troubles, lots of bloodshed in the Irish War. And I thought it appropriate to read number 97, Peace. Ah, that time could touch a form that could show what Homer's age bred to be a hero's wage. Were not all her life but storm, would not painters paint a form of such noble lines, I said, such a delicate high head, all that sternness amid charm, all that sweetness amid strength. Ah, but peace that comes at length came when time had touched her form. So peace personified as a very gentle strength. Sometimes I think humanity forgets the strength in gentleness and kindness and peace. Now we come to the years of the Great War, responsibilities. Number 131. To a child dancing in the wind, dance there upon the shore. What need have you to care for wind or water's roar? And tumble out your hair that the salt drops have wet. Being young, you have not known the fool's triumph, nor yet love's lost as soon as won, nor the best labourer dead, and all the sheaves to bind. What need have you to dread the monstrous crying of the wind? Almost a growing up poem for Yeats. 1919, after the war. the problems in Ireland. And then the Tower, 1928. The next one I'd like to read to you is number 221, on a picture of a black centaur by Edmund Dulac. Dulac is a famous artist and illustrator, or was rather, in the late 19th and early 20th century. Almost contemporary with Rackham, and made these beautiful inky washes, fantastical illustrations and fairies and things. Someone I might showcase for the Studies, Artists and Illustrators series. Your hooves have stamped at the black margin of the wood, even where horrible green parrots call and swing. My works are all stamped down into the sultry mud. I knew that horseplay, knew it for a murderous thing. What welcome sun has ripened is wholesome food to eat, and that alone, yet I, being driven half insane, because of some green wing, gathered old mummy wheat, in the mad abstract dark, and ground it grain by grain, and after baked it slowly in an oven. But now I bring full-flavored wine out of a barrel found, where 7 Ephesian topers slept and never knew. When Alexander's empire passed, they slept so sound. Stretch out your limbs and sleep a long Saturnian sleep. I have loved you better than my soul for all my words, and there is none so fit to keep a watch and keep unwearied eyes upon those horrible green birds. Something about the birds, I think, was slightly distasteful or abhorrent to Yeats. And as Yeats aged, his poems became more and more political and also reflective on life's difficulties and the effects of those difficulties. And you can see how the meter is affected as well. He writes poems about age still, this time from a different perspective. Last poems, 1938 to 1939. And I've chosen one from this section to read to you. And we always have these bird imagery. I don't think he liked birds. And the old age of Queen Maeve. He died in France on the 28th of January 1939, at the age of 73. And he was buried there in Cap Martin. Number 382, The Gift of Harun al-Rashid. Gusta ben Luca is my name, I write to Abd al-Rahman, fellow roisterer once. Now the good caliph's learned treasure, and for no ear but his, carry this letter. Through the great gallery of the treasure house, where banners of the caliphs hang, night-coloured, but brilliant as the night's embroidery, and Wait War's music past the little gallery, past books of learning from Byzantium, written in gold upon a purple stain, and pause at last, I was about to say, at the great book of Sappho's song, but no, for should you leave my letter there, a boy's, love-lorn, indifferent hands might come upon it, and let it fall unnoticed to the floor, pause at the treatise of Parmenides, and hide it there, for caliphs to the world's end must keep that perfect, as they keep her song, so great its fame when fitting time has passed. The parchment will disclose to some learned man a mystery that else had found no chronicler, but the wild Bedouin, though I approve those wanderers that welcomed in their tents what great Harun al-Rashid, occupied with Persian embassy or Grecian war, must needs neglect. I cannot hide the truth, that wandering in a desert, featureless, is air under a wing, can give birds wit, in aftertime they will speak much of me, and speak but fantasy, recall the year when our beloved Caliph put to death his vizier Jafar for an unknown reason. But if but the shirt upon my body knew it, I'd tear it off and throw it in the fire. That speech was all that the town knew, but he seemed for a while to have grown young again, seemed so on purpose, muttered Jaffar's friends, that none might know that he was conscience-struck. But that's a traitor's thought enough for me, that in the early summer of that year the mightiest of the princes of the world came to the least considered of his courtiers, sat down upon the fountain's marble edge, one hand amid the goldfish in the pool, and thereupon a colloquy took place, that I commend to all the chroniclers, to show how violent great hearts can lose their bitterness and find the honeycomb. I have brought a slender bride into the house. You know the saying, change the bride with the spring. And she and I, being sunk in happiness, cannot endure to think you tread these paths, when evening stirs the jasmine bough, and yet are brideless. I am falling into years. But such as you and I do not seem old, like men who live by habit. Every day I ride with falcon to the river's edge, or carry the ringed mail upon my back, or court a woman, neither enemy, game bird, nor woman does the same thing twice. And so a hunter carries in the eye a mimicry of youth. Can poet's thought that springs from body and in body falls, like this pure jet, now lost amid the blue sky, now bathing lily leaf and fish's scale, be mimicry? wonder if our souls are nearer to the surface of the body than souls that start no game and turn no rhyme. The soul's own youth, and not the body's youth, shows through our lineaments. My candle's bright, my lantern is too loyal not to show that it was made in your great Father's reign. And yet the jasmine season warms our blood. Great Prince, forgive the freedom of my speech. You think that love has seasons, and you think that if the spring bear off what the spring gave, the heart need suffer no defeat. But I, who have accepted the Byzantine faith that seems unnatural to Arabian minds, think when I choose a bride, I choose forever, and if her eye should not grow bright for mine, or brighten only for some younger eye, my heart could never turn from daily ruin, nor find a remedy. But what if I have lit upon a woman who so shares your thirst for those old crabbed mysteries, so strains to look beyond our life, and I, that never knew that strain would scarce seem bright, and yet herself can seem youth's very fountain, being all brimmed with life, were it but true, I would have found the best that life can give, companionship in those mysterious things that makes a man's soul or a woman's soul itself, and not some other soul, that love must needs be in this life, and in what follows unchanging and at peace. And it is right. Every philosopher should praise that love, but I, being none, can praise its opposite. It makes my passion stronger but to think, like passion stirs the peacock and his mate, the wild stag and the doe, that mouth to mouth is a man's mockery of the changeless soul. And thereupon his bounty gave what now can shake more blossom from autumnal chill than all my bursting springtime knew. A girl, perched in some window of her mother's house, had watched my daily passage to and fro, had heard impossible history of my past, imagined some impossible history, lived at my side, thought time's disfiguring touch gave but more reason for a woman's care. Yet was it love of me, or was it love of the stark mystery that has dazed my sight, perplexed her fantasy and planned her care? Or did the torchlight of that mystery pick out my features in such light and shade? Two contemplating passions chose one theme. Through sheer bewilderment, she had not paced the garden paths nor counted up the rooms before she had spread a book upon her knees and asked about the pictures or the text. And often those first days I saw her stare, an old dry writing in a learned tongue, on old dry faggots that could never please the extravagance of spring, or move a hand, as if that writing or the figured page were some dear cheek. Upon a moonless night, I sat where I could watch her sleeping form, and wrote by candlelight, but her form moved, and fearing that my light disturbed her sleep, I rose that I might screen it with a cloth. I heard her voice, turn that I may expound. What's bowed your shoulder and made pale your cheek? And saw her sitting upright on the bed, Was it she that spoke, or some great djinn? I say that a djinn spoke. A livelong hour she seemed the learned man, and I the child. Truths without father came, truths that no book of all the uncounted books that I've read. Truths without father came, truths that no book of all the uncounted books that I have read, nor thought out of her mind or mine begot. Self-born, high-born, and solitary truths, those terrible, implacable straight lines, drawn through the wandering vegetative dream, even those truths that when my bones are dust must drive the Arabian host. The voice grew still, and she lay down upon her bed and slept, but woke at the first gleam of day, rose up, and swept the house and sang about her work in childish ignorance of all that passed. A dozen nights of natural sleep, and then, when the full moon swam to its greatest heights, she rose, and with her eyes shut fast in sleep, walked through the house, unnoticed and unfelt. I wrapped her in a hooded cloak, and she, half running, dropped at the first ridge of the desert, and there marked out those emblems on the sand that day by day I study and marvel at. With her white finger, I led her home asleep, and once again she rose and swept the house, in childish ignorance of all that passed. Even today, after some 7 years, when maybe thrice in every moon her mouth murmured the wisdom of the desert jinns, she keeps that ignorance, nor has she now that first unnatural interest in my books. It seems enough that I am there, and yet, old fellow student, whose most patient ear heard all the anxiety of my passionate youth. It seems I must buy knowledge with my peace. What if she lose her ignorance, and so dream that I love her only for the voice, that every gift and every word of praise is but a payment for that midnight voice that is to age what milk is to a child? Were she to lose her love because she had lost her confidence in mine, or even lose its first simplicity, love, voice, and all my fine feathers would be plucked away, and I left shivering. The voice has drawn a quality of wisdom from her love's particular quality. The signs and shapes, all those abstractions that you fancied were from the great treatise of Parmenides, all those gyres and cubes and midnight things are but a new expression of her body drunk with the bitter sweetness of her youth. And now my utmost mystery is out. A woman's beauty is a storm-tossed banner. Under it wisdom stands, and I alone, of all Arabia's lovers, I alone, nor dazzled by the embroidery, nor lost in the confusion of its night-dark folds, can hear the armed man speak. We have some additional poems of different dates. All very reflective and full of imagery. Yeats was a very prolific writer. And there are the notes for his poems and indices. So in a very nice volume. Quite a shame to chuck it in the rubbish bin, but I've rescued it and hope you've enjoyed sharing it with me today. I wish you a very calm, peaceful day, or a beautiful, beautiful night. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others. And as always, be extra